Well, scams can cause significant harm, from financial losses to emotional damage. During this International Fraud Awareness Week, the DOJ is highlighting ways to prevent scams. Our Ashley Wheel joins us live in studio now after meeting with community organizations working to protect people from becoming a victim of fraud.
That's right. The DOJ warns that people should always be cautious when taking out cash or spending money, sending money to others. But people who help victims say you have to watch out for the red flags.
The first thing is always be wary, but it's just be safe.
Anyone can become a victim of a scam.
And there's no age range that is immune from this.
Lieutenant Matthew Wagner with the Cottage Grove Police Department has seen his community get hurt by scams.
We've had everything from, young teenagers that are getting scammed online for sexting type issues, all the way up to our vulnerable elderly.
He says they have been able to step in and save people from losing tens of thousands of dollars. Red flags to watch for include out-of-the-blue contact, pressure to act fast, and if the contact is making you afraid or confused.
These scams are sophisticated and designed to exploit trust, isolation, and emotion.
But not every scam gets caught right away. Ingrid Kundinger with the Greater Wisconsin Agency on Aging Resources says stakes are high when older adults get scammed.
Even one fraudulent transaction can threaten housing, medications, groceries, or long-term financial stability, making recovery extremely difficult, if not impossible.
And the harm goes beyond dollars lost.
These are not just scams, they are deeply personal violations with long-lasting consequences.
So a lot of emotional damage that can be done. People want to feel safe, and when they're scammed like that sense of security goes away.
Now, this flyer is now being shared with financial institutions and other organizations that deal with people who may fall victims to scams to help educate the community on those best practices. Live in studio, Ashley Wheel, WMTV 15 News.
Ashley, thank you. The FTC says more than 30,000 reports of fraud were submitted by Wisconsinites last year.